but leaked online. But Chris Brown quickly put to rest rumours that Drake and him were good, tweeting out that that song is old and whack. And setting aside Drake for a minute, it didn't take long for Chris Brown and Rihanna's relationship to turn sour as well. In May, Chris Brown dropped a remix to Kanye West's song Terraflu, which had a line in it saying he doesn't fuck with his old bitches like an old fur, everyone in the industry is have her. Rihanna pretty much confirmed that she felt some type of way about this by immediately unfollowing Chris on Twitter, and Chris Brown retaliated by unfollowing her, but to be fair, his retaliations are usually much worse. Then for a split second, it looked like this beef was about to turn from a love square into a love pentagon, as rumours that Meek Mill was dating Rihanna began to surface, sparking a mini Twitter beef between Meek, Chris, and Drake. Essentially, Chris called Rihanna a clout chaser, Meek told Chris that these chicks belong to the game and not him, and accused Chris of taking Meek off a song because he's been snapping Rihanna. And then Drake chimed in with the very helpful comment, "Oh, is that your hoe? She's our host." Very respectful way to talk about the woman so much, isn't it, Drake? Who knows, maybe you'd have ended up with her if you hadn't covered. But anyway, on the 12th of June, reports start emerging that Chris Brown and Rihanna have once again been meeting up in private. They've been seen partying together at a few of the same clubs, and Chris had even joined Rihanna and her family, including her grandfather, at Jay-Z's 40/40 Club one evening. She's looking less like Drake and Meek's hoe at this point, but I don't know. Now, these meetings reportedly caused even more tension between Rihanna and her team, who were concerned, for obvious reasons, about her reconciliation with Chris Brown, and also just worried that her party lifestyle was getting out of control. But 2 days later, Drake, Chris Brown, and Meek Mill would have an altercation at a nightclub that would prove once and for all that pretty much everybody involved is an out-of-control hoe. So on the 14th of June 2012, Chris Brown is chilling at the WIP nightclub in New York with his girlfriend Karrueche, attending a birthday party for Neo's manager, Javon Smith. Sources say that Drake, Meek Mill, and the OVO crew arrived after a short stop-off in an NYC strip club called Sin City. After they arrived, Chris Brown sent a bottle of champagne over to Drake's table with a note that said, "Let's be friends." And story goes, at this point, Drake's camp sent a bottle back with a different note attached to it that said, "I'm fucking the love of your life. Deal with it." Awfully friendly, isn't it? Well, apparently, this didn't go down very well with Chris Brown's side, and they decided to approach the OVO table and politely ask them to leave the venue. Reportedly, at this point, somebody took a swing at Chris, and it didn't take long from then for bottles to start flying all over the place. Before you know it, security had grabbed everybody up, cleared the club, and the scene was left a bigger mess of broken glass than an OVO wedding. Several people got injured in the altercation, and Chris was seen outside shirtless, storming out of the venue, and revealing that he got pretty badly injured, but luckily, Chris Brown's Twitter fingers were not injured during the altercation, and he took to social media straight after to get things popping. Chris wasn't the only person injured in this fight. His bodyguard, Big Cat, and also just a random tourist were treated with pretty serious injuries. And Tony Parker, point guard for the San Antonio Spurs, actually got a big shard of glass in his eye and suffered a scratch cornea. This looked like it was going to impact Parker's ability to compete in the 2012 Olympics, and he immediately sued the club for $20 million alongside several other people. They argued that the club was aware of the bad blood between Drake and Chris Brown at the time, and they shouldn't have allowed them both to enter the venue, especially considering the fact that they were both apparently wasted. Parker's suit, along with 10 others, were actually settled out of court, so you know there was some bags secured. Then a few weeks later, Chris Brown took numerous shots at Drake on a remix to Chief Keef's song I Don't Like alongside The Game. In August, Rihanna appeared on Oprah's show and opened up about forgiving Chris Brown.
A lot of people thought that Chris hitting you was unforgivable. Have you forgiven him?
I have forgiven him.
During the interview, she said that they'd been working on their friendship, and then a month later, they were looking like more than friends, when after winning a VMA, Rihanna walked off the stage and spotted Chris Brown and walked over to him. But weirdly, a couple of days after this, Chris Brown is seen sporting a very weird neck tattoo that seems to depict Rihanna's bloody face from when she was beaten up. That thing is creepy. These two continue to grow close together, and when Chris Brown was actually due back in court to find out whether he'd reached his probation relating to the Rihanna case by smoking weed, weirdly, Rihanna actually tweeted out messages in support of him, and things kept progressing for the feisty couple, as Rihanna and Chris Brown were put together, staying at the same hotel and attending a concert. Now, this seemed like the final straw for Chris Brown's girlfriend, not girlfriend, but sort of girlfriend, Karrueche, who tweeted out around this point, "Bye baby," effectively ending their relationship, confirmed by reports that came out the following day. Chris came out saying that he decided to be single to focus on his career, saying that he loves Karrueche, but he doesn't want her to get hurt by his friendship with Rihanna. Then a couple days later, Chris Brown dropped a pretty weird video that was called The Real Chris Brown, where he ponders whether or not he can love you.
You know, when you share history with somebody, then you tend to fall in love with somebody else. It's kind of difficult, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, is it such thing as loving two people? I don't know, you know, I don't know if that's possible, but for me, I feel like that, you know?
And apparently this hollow gesture was enough, and even Rihanna's dad comes out to say that he's forgiven Chris for his mistakes and that he supports their reconciliation. And meanwhile, even further reports came out suggesting that as part of the breakup, Karrueche was actually given money by Chris Brown to buy a house, and also had a 2-hour phone conversation with Rihanna. Questions like, why are you racist? What was right? Why are you such a home wrecker? But a few weeks went by and some questions still looked pretty unanswered as Karrueche was seen leaving Chris Brown's house. This certainly can't have been helped by the fact that a few weeks after that, Rihanna was going around denying that they were back together and reiterating that she doesn't think her relationship should be anybody's business. She's gonna hate this video then.
Are you guys together? Not together.
Chris continues to do damage control, by which I mean controlled demolition of his own life, by appearing on Big Boy's show, refusing to answer who he would take to Smash Island, Rihanna or Karrueche.
Bro, I'll bring both.
As you should.
As I should.
As you should, man. But that's your next threesome. This dude, man.
Yeah, I'm not sure that threesome's going to happen, Chris. Chris also discussed that Drake nightclub altercation and said that he was also trying to get paid off the back of that lawsuit, and weirdly reminding everyone that he boxes.
What happened with Chris Brown crew and Drake's crew in the club?
Yo, you can talk about that. You know, only reason I can't talk about that because we're dealing with some legal stuff. You know,
real talk.
And, you know, I'm trying to get paid.
Yeah, man.
You know,
and not trying to give out too much.
You know,
right?
Yeah, ain't trying to give out no information. But you know, we don't talk about other guys.
But it wasn't nothing where you hit him or he hit you. So it was like more.
It's none of that. I'm more reserved. You know, and I box. Right? We don't do. It was.
Yeah, well, his boxing skills weren't looking too tough when he was backing out of that fight with Big Draco. But anyway, as we got closer to the end of the year, Rihanna seemed to be backtracking on a lot of the things that she'd said, Instagramming a picture of herself on the PJ, saying that she was on her way to see her lover. And it turns out that she was on her way to a Thanksgiving party with Chris in Berlin. Going on to tweet a picture of Chris in bed, shirtless, asleep. So you must get so tired just spending your whole day arguing with people that call you a woman beater on Twitter. And by the end of the month, she was making some very classy tweets, including this one, where she says home is where the cock is, accompanied by a picture of her with her arms around a certified cock bag. At the time, I think a lot of people really just hoped that picture wasn't really a hug, and Rihanna was just practicing some jiu-jitsu for when Chris tries some dumb shit again. By March 2013, Chris Brown is still salty over the Drake incident and tells the Hollywood crowd, F Drake. This was a pretty interesting incident, actually, for apparently Chris Brown was just partying at a club, but got pissed off when the DJ dropped the song Started at the Bottom and decided to ask the DJ to get up on the mic. I can kind of sympathise with this because I have similar reactions at clubs when people play Danny Brown's music. But before you knew it, this unlucky crowd would then be subjected to an 8-song Chris Brown medley. Ball player and inventor of shit weed Richie Bush even jumped on stage to be his hype man. So a month later, Drake is all up in his feelings about Chris and appears on EVR radio saying that he's better than him.
These are the fact that I make better music than him, that I'm more popping than him, and that at one point in life, you know what I'm saying, the woman that he loves fell into my lap. I did what a real nigga would do and treated her with respect, so she's not up there talking down on me, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And all those things combined, you know, create an individual that comes up to your radio station and is just gonna, you know, do dumb shit.
Calm down, guys, calm down. You're both wankers, okay? Chris has a very brief reply to this, just tweeting out the words, woo! In May, Chris reveals that things didn't really work out with Rihanna. He names a busy schedule as the reason for his work. I suppose that's a better excuse than his shitty behaviour. And revealed that he'd reconciled with the other half of his failed Desert Island Smash career. And the news of Chris Brown and Rihanna's breakup had Drake rubbing his hands together like Birdman discovering a new rapper of his time. So Drizzy ramps up the Chris Brown disrespect to a whole new degree, once again choosing to diss him and his GQ cover story in June. But the slippery OVO girl Sheila Drake continues to slither his way into Rihanna's inner circle, and in August was seen dining with her in New York on a date that apparently ended in tears. Not long after this, Drake is blindsided by the blindsider to end all blindsidings, Ellen, inviting Drake on the show and asking him whether anything's going on between him and Rihanna. But Drake is incredibly coy about the whole thing.
That's Rihanna. So.
Oh, it's my turn now?
Yeah, your turn.
Great girl. We had our moment, and you know, I mean, always support and have love for her, and yeah.
A little nervous. Okay.
But behind the scenes, Drake was still putting in work, and soon he...
This video is sponsored by Skillshare.
50 50 Cent versus Ja Rule, Loose Change versus Loose Pockets. It's one of the most iconic beats in rap history, and the events surrounding it have been analysed by countless rap YouTubers and beef DVDs. 50 Cent and Ja Rule's clash seemed to begin with Ja Rule as the chart-topping titan taking on the scrappy newcomer of 50 Cent. But it ended with 50 Cent becoming one of the biggest phenomenons hip-hop has ever seen, and Ja Rule the punchline of a bad joke about gyros. But today, we're going to do things a little bit differently, and take a closer look at this beef from a slightly different angle that hasn't been explored quite enough. And that's Ja Rule's perspective. In today's video, we're going to be focusing solely on the beef that Ja Rule had, specifically with 50 Cent and Eminem, and no one else. Because the story of this beef has been told time and time again, with 50 Cent as the central protagonist, the David fighting against Goliath on all fronts. Murder Inc., the Supreme Team, Ja Rule, the game. 50 Cent has had more beef than most, and generally, these stories are spun with him being the hero, outmaneuvering everyone at every turn. And it's no surprise that 50 Cent wins beefs left, right and centre, because we know that 50 Cent meticulously studied Robert Greene's 48 Laws of Power. Hell, 50 Cent got so powerful after reading the 48 Laws of Power that he actually managed to strong-arm the author of the book into giving him his very own rule, with Robert Greene going on to co-author the sequel to the 48 Laws, the 50th Law, with 50 himself. And if there's one thing that 50 Cent picked up with his meticulous studying of power dynamics, it's that in order to win, you must crush your enemy completely. And when it came to Ja Rule, 50 Cent had a grudge so deep that even to this day, over 20 years later, he can't help but take any opportunity to publicly shit on Ja Rule. Because despite the fact that this beef was so incredibly devastating to Ja Rule in his career, no matter how much time passes, no matter how much the beef cools down, 50 and Ja just can't help but go at each other's necks, no matter what. This is a beef that runs so deep that both parties have said that it will be frying until they're both dead. But so many questions remain. Was what happened to Ja Rule's career really fair? Who was really responsible for Ja Rule's career going down the toilet? And why, after over 20 years, do 50 Cent and Ja Rule refuse to let this beef go? Basically, today, in the words of the great Dave Chappelle,
could somebody please find Ja Rule, get hold of this motherfucker so I can make sense of all this?
Story goes, the inciting incident for this entire beef was Ja Rule getting robbed by an old friend who had recently come out of jail. This Ja Rule jump-in was apparently the result of a messy love triangle where the man holding the gun on Ja had accused him of smashing his girl while he was in the joint and taxing Ja Rule to pay his revenge.
He was fucking my girl while I was up north. Just that and third. He proceeds to say, yo, give me your chain. And nothing to do with music, hip-hop, rap, none of that.
Ja Rule, unhappy about being robbed like a little bitch, calls up his buddy, local New York tough guy Kenneth Supreme McGriff, who flexes his power in the streets and manages to get Ja's chain back within 20 minutes.
Supreme was like, yo, Rule, hold on, let me handle this, you know what I'm saying? Supreme calls me back. 15, 20 minutes later, he's like, I got your chain. He just came back on the block. I took your chain from him. I got your chain.
Now, this situation essentially had nothing to do with 50 Cent. But story goes, one night out in New York, Ja Rule spotted 50 Cent hanging out with the very guy who had taken his chain.
A friend of mine's robbed Ja Rule. He see me kicking it with the nigga that robbed him, and he feel like, oh shit, I shouldn't speak to this dude.
If you ask 50, this is when Ja Rule started having a problem with him. And if you ask Ja Rule, this is where 50 Cent decided to use this association to start beefing with Ja Rule in an effort to kickstart his budding rap career.
50 used that as his end to have something to say about me. You know what I'm saying? But it had nothing to do with it.
But there's something important you've got to keep in mind. This is 1999, and at this point, Ja Rule was a somebody, 50 Cent was a nobody. In the 90s, Ja Rule had linked up with DJ turned record exec Irv Gotti, another friend of New York street legend Kenneth Supreme McGriff, who had been given the Murder Inc. record label as an imprint underneath Def Jam Records. Irv placed Ja Rule as the flagship artist on Murder Inc. Records, with Ja's career truly taking off for the first time after he wrote and featured on Jay-Z's 1998 single Can I Get Her, at this time rapping simply under the name Ja. Can I Get Her hit 19 on Billboard and became Jay-Z's biggest song at the time. This was followed by Ja Rule's successful solo hit Holla Holla, which went 35 on Billboard, with this living on Ja Rule's debut studio album Veni Veti Vici, which hit 3 on Billboard and sold 184k copies first week. Another track that was on this project was the street anthem Murder for Life featuring Memphis Bleak, where Ja Rule famously said on the hook, "It's murder for life." So in response to this song and in an effort to pick up some clout by getting in a beef with Ja Rule, 50 Cent records his response song Life's on the Line, which is intended to live on his debut album Power of the Dollar. And on that track, 50 Cent flips the lyrics from Ja Rule's murder murder for life, saying murder, I don't believe you, essentially going at Ja Rule and his crew Murder Inc., saying that they're a bunch of phonies. And from here, 50 Cent begins to appear in small-time media appearances saying that he is the guy coming for Ja Rule.
50 Cent, nigga, 1999. That's the nigga that they said Ja Rule. That's the nigga that they said Ja Rule.
Around this time, Ja begins to publicly acknowledge 50, but for no more than simply being on his dick and fishing for clout.
What's up with this 50 Cent shit?
Alright, it's simple and plain. You know, the nigga, you know, he's on my dick and shit. And then, you know, you got them clowns that come out and want to fucking say something about you to try to boost their shit or whatever.
But from here, 50 Cent doubles down on the disrespect and begins to clap back in interviews, reiterating that Ja Rule is a fraud and he can't put down 50 Street credentials.
You know what I'm saying? I had to land through some business in 19 the street hustle. But you know what I'm saying? Niggas ain't never had nothing before rap.
Now, with all of this talking in the streets, eventually this tension comes to a head. And when 50 and Ja Rule are both booked to play the same venue in Atlanta, they end up running into each other and having a confrontation at a hotel. The story goes, this was a tense verbal back and forth, with Ja telling 50 he was pissed about that diss song. But apparently during this confrontation, Ja Rule was holding a proper baseball bat that he apparently tried out on stage. At a certain point, 50 Cent didn't like how aggressive Ja Rule was getting with that bat in his hands, and before he could use it, 50 Cent decided to be proactive, sucker punching Ja Rule in his stupid face. A scuffle breaks out between their respective crews, and everybody immediately scatters.
I see him in Atlanta. You know what I'm saying? It's, you know, around my neck or whatever. I'm holding the bat. Got mad and I start screaming at him and telling him that, you know, he was a bitch and this, that, and the third. And so he swings at me. So now we start tussling.
Now, here's where the stories diverge. If you listen to Ja Rule, 50 Cent started clout chasing after this fight, telling everybody that he could Ja's chain.
I knocked him out, took his chain.
Ja denies this. Meanwhile, other people say Ja and 50 both dropped chains during the scuffle, suggesting that 50 had it picking up Ja's chain. But regardless of the mythical stolen chain, it wouldn't take too long before these two titans of toxicity ran into each other again. Next up, March 2000, when Ja Rule and his Murder Inc. crew got word that 50 Cent was recording at the Hit Factory Studios in New York. Upon getting word of 50's location, apparently Ja and the Murder Inc. crew rushed into 50's studio session, at which point 50 Cent ends up getting stabbed by Murder Inc. and Video's black child, something which he later downplays.
It's like 5 of us and 5 of them, and niggas is getting it on and fighting it. But some way, somehow, the lights got hit off. But I felt the gap was in the area niggas was reaching for. You know what I mean? And I wasn't letting nobody get to their gun to pop me. You know what I mean? So I started poking niggas straight up and down.
Then I didn't go to the hospital. The scratch I had only was the 3 stitches. I didn't go to I went home.
The thing is, 50 Cent wasn't the only person to get stabbed in this incident. Apparently, other less gangster or professional individuals were in the studio working on music with G-Unit and ended up getting injured. And one of the non-G-Unit non-Gs ends up filing a police report, telling the feds what went down, leading to Blackchild being arrested for the stabbings. As a result, the NYPD placed an order of protection on anybody that was involved in the incident, forcing Murder Inc. to stay away from anybody named, including 50 Cent. Now, this document would later become an integral part of the Ja Rule vs. 50 beef, as Ja Rule and others would endlessly trot out this document as supposed proof that 50 Cent snitched against. But regardless of the issues with Ja Rule and Murder Inc., things would soon get more and more dangerous in these streets. You see, at this point, 50 Cent was beginning to build up a buzz in the hood musically, having recently dropped the track Out the World with a Bad Rapper in mid-1999. This tongue-in-cheek street track basically saw 50 Cent jokingly naming numerous rappers in the industry by name and saying that he was going to rob them. This included Puff Daddy. 50 Cent said he was going to kidnap Kim Porter and hold her for ransom. He threatened to stick up Slick Rick with a blick. He mocked ODB from the Wu-Tang Clan for being so broke he wouldn't even be worth robbing. Master P, Will Smith, and Timbaland all got targeted in a 3-for-1 stick-up sale. DMX was getting all the smoke, not crack smoke for once. Ray, Ghost, and RZA from Wu-Tang got their rings snatched. Cannabis got smoked literally and metaphorically. And even Juvenile got robbed of his Cash Money piece and gold teeth because Bofty's out here moving like the street tooth fairy. Well, naturally, dissing the entire rap game and saying that you're going to rob them ended up getting 50 Cent a decent amount of clout. And story goes, not long after this song, behind the scenes, some people in the industry begun to get upset. The most notable response that came from 50 was from Jay-Z. After 50 said said on How to Rob that he would put 4 bullets in Jay-Z's Bentley door. Jay-Z jumped on wax a few months later with the iconic line from the song It's Hot, saying, "Go against Jigga, your ass is dense. I'm about $1, what the fuck is 50 cents?" By the year 2000, 50 Cent clearly had a taste for gaining clout by airing out people's dirty laundry. And after How to Rob, he decided to truly die trying to get rich. Dropping a new song, this time naming a bunch of gangsters that he knows from the streets of New York by name. Specifically, our old chum Kenneth Supreme McGriff, that same chap who had got Ja Rule's chain back right at the start of this story. So, in early 2000, 50 Cent's song Ghetto Quran begins to circulate in the streets of New York, at which point the streets begin to turn on 50. In fact, Ja Rule later said in his autobiography Unruly that this was the moment that word got out that 50 was apparently a snitch, and from this point on he was in danger in these streets. Ja Rule also said that it was around this time that Supreme actively took steps to blacklist 50 Cent from the music industry, and eventually a hitter was dispatched allegedly by the Supreme team to try and blacklist 50 Cent from life. And on May 24th, 2000, 50 Cent is famously shot 9 times outside of his grandmother's house, but miraculously survives. Fortunately, 50 Cent didn't die, but he was seriously injured and out of action for a long period of time. Laid up in a hospital bed, barely alive, and blacklisted from the rap game. 50 would be out of action for some time with nothing to do but stew in a rage and get hungrier and hungrier for revenge on those who wronged him. But meanwhile, whilst 50 Cent is a rock bottom, with his biggest op out of the picture, Ja Rule is on fire and goes on the chart run of a lifetime. He dropped his second album in October 2000, Rule 336. The album has a radio-friendly mainstream angle and is a runaway success for Ja Rule, landing at #1 and selling 276,000 copies in the first week of release. And the project had numerous hit singles, including Put It On Me that went #8 on the charts and landed a Grammy nomination for Best Rap Performance by a Duo or Group. Also in 2000, Murder Inc. dropped the Murderers album. On the track When Shit Gets Ugly, Ja Rule dissed 50 Cent, calling him loose change, bars which Ja Rule also echoed on his 99 Rap City freestyle.
You loose change, I had in the whip, probably from your chick, cause she's...
Then in the year 2001, whilst 50 Cent is still lying low, recovering and recording, Ja Rule drops his third album, Pain Is Love. This album was also a huge success, landing at #1 on Billboard and bagging a Grammy nomination for Best Rap Album, as well as scoring 2 #1 singles, the murder version of I'm Real with J-Lo and Always on Time with Ashanti. And by the time we get to the year 2002, Ja Rule was everywhere, and 50 Cent was nowhere. But in the shadows, 50 Cent was lurking, sharpening his pen and his sword, and getting ready to strike, taking down Ja Rule in one of the biggest reversals of fortune the rap game has ever seen.
And now, a word from our sponsor.
Shout out Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Who's ready to join the Skillshare unit? Yeah, I love Skillshare. Get Skillshare now, baby. Listen. Skillshare are the kings of online learning. Their community is top notch and I can confirm it. They got thousands of inspiring classes for creative and curious people to improve their skills the fastest. Explore new skills, deepen existing passions, get lost in creativity. Now that's what's cracking. If your life is uncertain and you don't know what's happening, just try out Skillshare and their creative challenges and productivity classes. Help you structure your time, set up achievable goals that you'll hit just fine. And with that in mind, I took a dope new class from Guy Towers that is learning business facts fast. Turn an idea to a high growth biz, cause I wanna make a million like 50 did. But it's not just business facts, no, get it correct, cause by the end you'll have a 10 slide pitch deck. Do it to make big moves or do it just for fun. Fight or boredom, get creative, get off your bum. Keep on learning, treat yourself the creative way, and join the community. Drop in now and say hey. Skillshare is curated specifically for learning, meaning there's no lame ads getting your eyeballs burning. They're always launching new classes, so it's super handy. It's easy to focus with a new skill that you fancy. The first 1,000 people click the link, get a free trial of Skillshare, premium membership. After that, it's less than $10 a month annually. So click the link in the description and join the team. Hit that link in the description and join the Skillshare unit. You can learn a new skill, enhance your creativity, and you'll be helping support my channel. Thanks so much to Skillshare. Go show them love. They're really one of the dopest sponsors in the game. I just couldn't do what I do without the support of Skillshare. So you shout out them, hit that link in the description. Love Skillshare. Appreciate everyone. Bang. After getting blacklisted from the rap game, 50 Cent literally could not find a studio to record it. In fact, 50 Cent had been blacklisted by the rap game so hard that he had to go all the way to Canada just to get studio time, where he recorded dozens of songs and planned his comeback. 50's first comeback song after getting shot is the understandably titled track, Fuck You. This appeared on his Guess Who's Back mixtape, made up of both old and new songs which 50 distributed himself. Clearly 50 wasn't worried about his ops on this track, as he directly discusses the shooting and even speculates who was responsible by name. Meanwhile, on other tracks on the project, 50 Cent directly confronts Ja Rule and the crew who stabbed him in the studio, saying that he'll get them eventually and they should have killed him. Thing is, as far as Ja Rule and Supreme were concerned, 50 was done at this point, but 50's comeback release didn't immediately make a huge splash, and certainly didn't give Ja Rule any cause for concern initially. However, the one thing that Ja Rule wasn't banking on was somebody else in the industry finding 50 Cent's tape and like it. And what do you know, in 2002, 50 Cent's lawyer sent a copy of Guess Who's Back to Eminem's manager, Paul Rosenberg. Apparently blown away by 50 Cent's work, M immediately blundered out to LA to work with him as Dr. And well, the history of fake because soon after this trip, 50 Cent is signed to Eminem and Dr. Dre, one of the that brought him into the Interscope Shady Records team. And from here, 50 Cent would get heavily mentored by both Dr. Dre and Eminem, taking his sound to the next level and helping him craft his masterpiece. Now, apparently, as part of this mentorship, Eminem and Dr. Dre sat 50 Cent down for a man-to-man talk saying that he should stay focused and avoid beating Ja Rule, something M revealed years later on the track Light to the Soldiers. And to be fair, things seemed all good initially. Fans enjoyed 50 Cent's latest 50 Cent is the Future mixtape that released in June, and then in August, fresh off the Shady Records deal, 50 Cent drops his follow-up mixtape No Mercy, No Fear. And this project features 50's breakout track Wankster. The now legendary 50 Cent song all about fake gangsters who say they're about that life but have never popped none. The track itself doesn't mention Ja Rule by name, but ever since its release, it's been pretty widely considered as a subliminal diss track aimed squarely at Ja Rule's head. 50 Cent's never outright admitted this, simply saying that the song is about fake gangsters, but since other people have said Ja Rule fits the bill, Ja Rule is indeed a wankster. And let's be real, right? Once 50 Cent put together a music video for this track, the opening scene features a kid opening up a wankster doll who is literally wearing the exact same black outfit and long chain guitar pendant as Ja Rule wore in this Rap City freestyle. So naturally, wankster had Ja Rule big old mad. So in October of 2002, Murder Inc. ended up covering The Source magazine, and Ja was all in his feelings, sending warning shots to Dr. Dre and Eminem, basically saying they can both get it, and Ja's going to take down their company if 50 Cent starts dissing him. But if that wasn't enough, Ja Rule and Irv Gotti went on Hot 97 to continue their onslaught, exposing 50 Cent to the world in what must be true crime's very first gangland-style restraining order reveal, telling everyone that 50 Cent got stabbed at the Hit Factory and that an order of protection was filed afterwards, spinning it as if 50 Cent was a full-blown snitch who had specifically applied for a restraining order against Ja Rule and Irv Gotti.
I'm not worried about these wanksters. Hoes in the beat, gangs, informants,
tension, drama, whatever. Just handle your business, man.
snitches.
And what I'm holding in my hand, I'm gonna leave with you, man, is an order of protection. An order of protection for Irving Lorenzo to stay away from Curtis Jackson. That's 50, y'all.
AKA 5-0.
AKA 5-0, AKA informant, AKA I'm telling. I never went to jail. First time I ever went to jail was because we whipped his ass and he went and felt the need to inform the cop.
But it wasn't just about the restraining order. John went further in airing out the dirty laundry, openly discussing and laughing about 50 Cent getting stabbed at the Hit Factory.
That little incident we had at the Hit Factory, he tells you about it.
A little stabbing with the butter knife.
Yeah.
It was a little altercation.
It
It wasn't nothing crazy. It was nothing big. It was just a little scuffle. It was nothing big.
Yes, sir.
But he felt the need, to go to the cops
and press charges.
Press charges. Look, the opponent is further informed by Mr. Jackson that as a result of the above described conduct, informant suffered lacerations. Informant, y'all.
Informant.
Now, all of of this coordinated hating apparently caused 50 Cent to go straight to this Ja Rule hard on wax. Apparently, Eminem and Dr. Dre were okay with it at this point. As we later learned from the lyrics on Eminem's Like Toy Soldiers, it was all the public talk about stabbing 50 Cent that went over the line. In fact, Eminem's support went far beyond just letting 50 Cent diss Ja Rule. M actually poured gas on the fire by placing numerous 50 Cent tracks, including Wankster, onto the hugely successful soundtrack album for his movie 8 Mile, as well as around this time commissioning that high-budget Wankster music video.
What's up, this is 50 Cent. It's the behind the scenes right here. We're doing a video shoot for Wankster. So if the 8 Mile soundtrack is crazy, Eminem, Dr. Dre, Shady Aftermath, rap juggernaut shit, heard me? Yeah. See, I know I'm starting to get big now when you got a behind the scenes at your video shoot, because my last video shoot was nobody there but me.
So, 50 Cent is still making moves in these scripts. The following month, 50 drops his God's Plan mixtape, which featured the track Catch Me in the Hood, echoing those same sentiments of Wankster. Not mentioning Ja Rule by name, but going at an unnamed off, on the basis they're not a real gangster, but 50 is. That project was followed up in January 2003 with G-Unit's Automatic Gunfire mixtape. That project had numerous diss tracks and skits going at Ja Rule.
If you liked the Ja Rule Duets album, you'll flip when you hear his new album, Ja Rule Duets 2. I could kiss you, baby, baby. And if you order now, you'll get this special bonus track. Put it on, baby, without you. Sing it with myself. Yeah. Holla.
Ja Rule is so hot right now, everybody wants to record with him. Or at least re-record with him. On Duets 3, you'll get this.
Whatever. What you say to all my people, we be living it up.
But of course, the biggest put down on Ja Rule and the Murder Inc. crew was the track I Smell Pussy, calling out every member of Murder Inc. for smelling like a fish ball at closing time one by one. Also on that mixtape was the track Bang Bang, accusing Ja Rule of coming out with the whole Order of Protection reveal purely to plug his own album release. And then of course there was the track 8 More Miles, where 50 imagines just how mad Ja must be at the fact that the hood loves 50 more than Ja. At this point, 50 had firmly put the boot into Ja Rule, but at this point he was also still an underground artist just bubbling up in the rap game. Thing is, little did Ja Rule know that around the corner was a perfect storm. A once-in-a-lifetime chain of events that would see 50 Cent catapulted to the top of the rap game and Ja Rule consigned to the scrap heap, unable to even release music or respond to 50's disses. In fact, I would wager that everything went downhill from the very moment that Ja Rule heard those words, "Go Shawty, it's your birthday."
You know, the Wankster record, it was a snazzy tune, but you know, it was not. We were so heavy making these big. Look, guys. People start mumbling to me, yo, he's with DRE. So he said, all right, let's listen to it. Dun, 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 dun. I'm like, oh God, fucking Dre. So I'm like, the beat is fucking nuts. He may have one, but let's see if he connected the dots lyrically. He may have not connected the dots lyrically. I'm like, this is it. I turned to Rule and everyone in the office, and I said, yo, buckle up. We have a major problem.
Yes, in January 2003, Ja Rule, Irv Gotti, and the entire Murder Inc. crew were lining up to swallow the largest L in rap game history. Not only was 50 Cent in the Club the hottest rap song to ever come out, landing at #1 on Billboard and grabbing 2 Grammy nominations, but also in January 2003, the feds raided the Murder Inc. offices in an attempt to connect them to our old gangster buddy from New York, Kenneth Supreme McGriff, who had also been arrested while on the run not long before this, with the feds connecting genuine gangster Supreme McGriff with fake gangsters Murder Inc., trying to pin this record label as a real criminal organisation. I mean, perhaps these are the kind of problems you should have expected when you named your record label Murder Incorporated. Anyway, the Murder Inc. trial is a whole other kettle of fish. If you do want me to do an entire story on the rise and fall of Murder Inc., head on over to my Discord, link in description, and drop me a message in the story suggestion tab so that I know that's something you actually want to see. But anywho, the feds seized all of Murder Inc.'s assets and held onto them for a few years whilst Ja and Irv waited to go to trial. With all of this going on at the same time, this meant the rise of 50 Cent to the top of the rap game was double devastating for Ja Rule, because the federal case with its clause in the Murder Inc. label pretty much prevented Ja Rule from being able to properly talk his shit in music in response to 50 Cent, who was rising up the charts and continually talking shit about Ja and the Inc. So instead of responding with music, in February of 2003, Ja Rule gets the cover of the Source magazine and he trots out those same tired points against 50 Cent, calling him a snitch snitch and dragging the old order of protection out again. I mean, the headline of this cover story was quite literally, does 50 Cent need protection from Ja Rule? Little did Ja Rule know that he was about to get fucked by 50 Cent, sans protection, as within days of this interview coming out, Puffy's Get Rich or Die Trying drops, becoming one of the biggest rap debuts in history. And to make matters worse, this album had the devastating Ja Rule diss track Back Down, which was of course produced by Dr. Dre, once again calling out Ja Rule for being a fake gangster, starting his second verse with a hilarious impression of Ja Rule's inner monologue, and ending the song with somebody doing an impression of Ja Rule's stylist, an apparent reference to a made-up rumour that Ja Rule had had a homosexual affair with his stylist. A rumour apparently made up by Dogecoin King DMX. But if all of that wasn't bad enough, 50 Cent also threw two of his old Ja Rule disses on Get Rich or Die Trying as bonus tracks, the songs Life's on the Line and You Not Like Me. And remember, this album was literally the best-selling album in America for 2003, moving 6.5 million copies. That's 6.5 motherfuckers out here bumping 50 Cent's music and saying fuck Ja Rule. Not a good look, but perhaps at the time Ja Rule didn't really realise what was actually happening, because at this time 50 was swinging his enormous influence in a big way, and the fuck Ja Rule movement was genuinely picking up big steam amongst fans. Meanwhile, Ja Rule couldn't really directly respond to all of these jabs because of the ongoing investigation into his label. At this point, 50 Cent had basically become what Ja Rule was the year before, when he was getting back-to-back number ones. Hell, 50 was bigger at this point. And so, unable to record new music, Ja Rule ended up making another sideways dig at 50 any way he could, going on to drop the music video for the track Murder Reigns, a song from his Last Temptation album that had already released the previous year. And this music video seemingly depicted somebody pulling up in a Range Rover at a police station, going in and completely snitching on Murder Inc. to the feds, with the implication being that this guy in the video was 50 Cent. Thing is though, while Ja Rule was desperate trying to find any way that he could diss 50 Cent without actually making any music, the Shady Records team were making project after project laced with Ja Rule put-downs. Only a few weeks after Get Rich or Die Trying drops, executive produced by Eminem, full of Ja Rule disses, Eminem also ends up exec producing the soundtrack for the movie Cradle to the Grave, starring none other than Ja Rule's main op at the time, and connoisseur DMX. So in the name of shared ops, Eminem decides to jump on the track Go to Sleep with DMX, running a metaphorical train on Ja Rule, with M saying outright Ja can get it, and the whole chorus basically just being Eminem and DMX going back and forth saying they want to put a bullet in Ja's head. So now Eminem is officially in play in this beef. I tell you what, you do not want to get in a beef with Eminem. In March 2003, 50 isn't done wailing on Ja Rule just yet. At the end of the month, he drops the mixtape Smoking Day 2, featuring a track called The Realest Killers. This song eventually ended up on the soundtrack to the Tupac film Tupac Resurrection, and it also featured a posthumous verse from Tupac, as well as an intro from 50 Cent talking about someone, Ja Rule, being a fake Tupac, and a full-length 50 Cent verse where he seems to go at Ja Rule for pretending to be Tupac, suggesting he did this to get hot, but now he's not. I mean, this was a particularly scathing type of diss because it's a Tupac song remix, and after all, Ja Rule's entire career has been dogged by these Tupac comparisons. But this wouldn't be the last time that Eminem and 50 Cent would use the Tupac connection to hurt Ja Rule's feelings. In April, Ja Rule finally jumps on the song responding to Eminem, with a freestyle on 50 Cent's Stabber, Black Child's mixtape, once again dissing 50 for being a snitch, and saying he's going to get busy with a shotty on Blondie, aka Eminem.
Looking out through the dark, I see like shades. So I'm hunting you blindly with the sword gauge. Cause I heard that little nigga there was talking crazy. We heard your crack, I went around beat out your bed. And half your moms getting raped by niggas that speaks on the daily. And you know you feel me, cause I'm clearly the rap niggas shimmy half a nigga.
This freestyle was just a taste of things to come, however, as a few days later, Ja Rule goes on to release the devastating full-length diss track, Loose Change, an obvious reference to 50 Cent. In the track, he imagines 50 being dead and calls him a snitch once again, but the track went far beyond just this as 50. Ja Rule dissed the entire label, Shady Records, Interscope. Hell, he even went at label boss Jimmy Iovine saying that he gets peed on. No free beats for Ja. He also accused Dr. Dre of being gay and a cross-dresser along with Eminem, and M was the one who Ja had the most smoke for on this song, accusing M of wanting to be black before dropping the beat and ending the song with the most devastating diss line that you could possibly say to Eminem.
Shut up, damn, you claim your mother's a crackhead and Kim is a known slut, so what's Ellie gonna be when she grows up?
Yes, basically, he said that his daughter was going to grow up to be a hoe. Don't do that, Ja. Oh, Ja. Naturally, Eminem was not going to let this slide. He later said in his verse 1 told us that This was the moment in the beef that he completely lost it. And a couple of weeks later, we got a big response, as DJ Green Lantern drops the Invasion Part 2 mixtape, which features Eminem, D12, G-Unit, and other Interscope Records artists, all dissing Ja Rule. They had skits with Eminem mocking Ja.
Keep it locked in right here. Coming up next, we got the new Last Temptation by Ja Rule's Nothing Anymore.
This was followed by a rare Eminem and G-Unit link-up, the Ja Rule Diss-a-thon Bump Heads, where Eminem mocked Ja for a long laundry list of things, including, but not limited to, taking ecstasy, thinking he's DMX, thinking he's Tupac, thinking he's Martin Luther King, singing the same songs over and over again, and basically just being Ja Rule. Then M goes on to ask why did Ja Rule say anything to him when they bumped into each other at the airport. Now this is a reference to a mythical incident where Ja Rule and Eminem did indeed run into each other at an airport when they were both having their jets refueled at the same time. An incident which Ja actually elaborated on many years later in a Black TV interview.
I seen that we was at Teterboro, and we were switching jets, and it was a man-to-man respectful conversation. Like, I know what it is, and them was like, you know, I don't really got no hard feelings towards you. It's just, that's home team, and it's a rap beef, and
he signed to my label.
He signed to my label, you know what I'm saying? And I'm like, I know what it is, you know what I'm saying? I said, I ain't got nothing against you neither.
Well, according to Eminem, Ja Rule was the one being all buzzed up that day. In fact, M ends the verse with the nailer of the line, saying that day we met at the airport, Ja Rule just slapped my hand, smiled, and told me 50 Cent was everything he wanted to be. Now I know that's enough to make Ja Rule want to jump off the roof of the nearest gyro spot to a tzatziki-soaked grave, but the Shady Records execution squad were not done there, oh no. They were just warming up, because the next track on the mixtape is the devastating Loose Change response song, Hail Mary. Another reworking of a classic Tupac song just to add a little more salt to Ja Rule's wounds. In fact, before a single lyric had even been dropped in this song, Eminem had handed Ja Rule another Tupac-shaped L when he decided to prevent Ja Rule from participating in any of the songs on the new posthumous Tupac album, Loyal to the Game, which Eminem had been given permission to executive produce by Tupac's family. So doubling the disrespect on M's version of Hail Mary, he uses Tupac's cadence and flow to dish Ja Rule in the worst possible way, saying in the hook, if Pac was still here now, he would never ride with Ja. Na 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 na. What's that? He said that Ja Rule's been stealing Tupac's quotes for years, hoping no one will notice. He dropped numerous references to Ja Rule being hooked on pills, which is a little rich coming from Eminem these days, but whatever. Next verse, 50 Cent taps into the Royal Rumble and goes hard on Ja, saying that Ja couldn't take 9 shots like he did, and ask him when's your little sweet ass gonna come out of the closet. But of course they weren't done there, no, because Hail Mary was followed up by another Ja Rule diss, Do Re Mi, aka Haley's Revenge with Eminem and D12. A track which literally opens with a skit where Eminem's daughter Haley says that she doesn't want to end up like Ja Rule's dirty ass kids. Eminem even asks his daughter to go and fetch his Oscar so that he can shove it up Ja Rule's ass. And then D12 ride out hard on Ja Rule in the verses too, with M jumping on the hook saying, Ja, quit playing, knock it off, you're not Tupac. Don't hate me because I'm hot and you're not, shooting at me with the only shot you've got. And to cap it all off, Haley jumps back onto the track on the outro to ask Eminem, Ja Rule is taller than her, prompting him to reply, nah honey, you're the same height. Woo, that's savage. After that, the mixtape is littered with more Ja Rule disses. Hell, G-Unit even had Tony Yayo phone in from jail just to say fuck Ja Rule.
We just tracked the nigga for some motherfucking phone time, and I'm about to drop some shit for Ja Rule, punk pussy ass.
All of this was frankly devastating for Ja Rule and Murder Inc., who was still going through the ringer with their ongoing case. At this point, 50 Cent and Eminem were the hottest in the game, and their army of fans all over the planet were screaming fuck Ja Rule in unison. In an attempt to respond to this, Ja Rule and Irv Gotti ended up bagging a XXL cover story where they were pictured on the crosshairs and named as 2 of America's most wanted, doing an extended interview in their words to fire back at all the motherfucking haters. Irv said that he thinks the fans want the beef to turn violent, going on to suggest that 50 Cent or Eminem could end up being killed as part of this beef. Ja Rule says he hasn't seen 50 since the beef started, eventually going on to say that he's going to wear out 50 Cent, Eminem, or Dr. Dre's ass if he ever catches up with him. Now, I don't want to imagine what he means by that, but it would turn out that offering to wear out the ass of a legend like Dr. Dre was not such a good idea either, because a few months later, the Shady Records hit Shit Hits the Fan drops, featuring a verse from Dr. Dre where he, I can only really describe it as where's Ja Rule's ass. Dre directly responds to Ja's threat of slapping him, saying that Ja's got to jump to even have a shot at slapping Dre's kneecaps. Dre goes on to say that he laughs at the threats in magazines and he sees right through them, and then finally coming through with the coffin nailer of a line, you're not Tupac, I knew him, Pac was a real Nigel, you're just a fucking insult to him. My lord, that's savage. Now, in response to the onslaught of hate that he was getting from the other side, Ja Rule finally got round to dropping a few diss songs. Firstly, there was Guess Who Shot Ya, a track mainly mocking 50 Cent for getting shot a bunch of times and not knowing who did it, and insinuating that murder even had something to do with that shooting, suggesting that 50 snitched. Ironic when you're literally snitching on yourself in the same breath, isn't it? But anyway, Ja also makes fun of 50's mom, who was a drug dealer and killed when he was a kid. Another Ja Rule diss track circulated around this time under the title of So Hot, where Ja dissed 50 for more of the same old things. Now, it's not entirely clear when these disses dropped, but really they were all just the appetizer for Ja's new, bigger, much more polished response single, Clap Back, which was frankly one of the most successful records that he had put out in a while, landing at 44 on Billboard and of course being laden with 50 Cent and Eminem disses. Ja says he's going to find Eminem like Saddam and bomb him. He says he's going to let guns blast on 50 Cent for snitching, yet bizarrely, after dropping a mainstream and quite successful diss song, Ja seems to do a complete 180, appearing in a bizarre 30-minute interview with Louis Farrakhan from the Nation of Islam, apparently calling for peace with 50.
Will this meeting of a 27-year-old rapper and a 70-year-old charismatic religious leader end this beef?
But if you look closely, you could tell Ja's heart wasn't really in it.
Tell me, how did this beef get started with you and Brother 50?
I really think it started from a lot of jealousy, a lot of hatred towards me.
Allegedly, 50 was invited to this sit-down but turned it down because he wasn't buying Ja Rule's flimsy Peacemaker act, later telling MTV that he thought the entire thing was simply a publicity stunt to try and promote his album. And sure enough, straight after that interview, Ja Rule's album drops. Blood in My Eye was considered by many as sort of a hate album, because the entire thing was pretty much just littered with 50 Cent and Shady Records disses. This included the track Things Gone Change, where Ja went at 50M, Dr. Dre, hell, he even had Smoke for Proof out of D12. Leave Proof out of this! But regardless of Ja Rule just whining out all over the Shady Records boys on his Blood in My Eye album, this album ultimately flopped to Ja Rule's own standards. It only managed to hit number 6 on Billboard, moving 139,000 copies first week, which I know is pretty good to 2021 standards. But hell, even back then, the G-Unit Crew album Beg for Mercy debuted better at number 3 on Billboard and selling 377,000 units first week. That's not a 50 album, that's the G-Unit album. In my opinion, it's really here where Ja fucked up the most. Because him alone, Ja Rule, is the one who let his album and ultimately his entire career be defined by this beef with 50 Cent. And as a result, his failure in this beef would be intrinsically linked to a complete failure of his entire career from this point onward. Furthermore, Ja Rule had kind of abandoned the original fans that took him to the top by dropping his clean pop mainstream image so that he could drop the street album Blood in My Eye that was just full of hate and disses, alienated that mainstream pop audience who had initially bought his earlier albums in droves. And at this point, Ja Rule was completely alienated from any of the real rap fans who were riding with 50 Cent and G-Unit at the time. You simply couldn't be a fan of 50 Cent and also like Ja Rule, and Ja Rule was partly responsible for that. So the coffin of Ja Rule's career was firmly nailed shut at this point, and from here on out, we would truly see the fall of Ja Rule. Ja Rule had made the biggest mistake he possibly could with Blood in My Eye. He allowed the 50 Cent beef to completely define his entire musical output. 50 Cent was living in Ja's head and on Ja's music rent-free. Meanwhile, 50 Cent was being interviewed by MTV saying that he's moving on and the beef is over, very wisely pointing out that the G-Unit Beg for Mercy album had no mentions of Ja Rule, which is a very good point. But in spite of that sentiment, however, in the months that followed, more mixtape tracks and leaks would emerge that saw the Shady Records crew continuing to keep Ja Rule while he was down. 50 Cent did a Clapback remix, dissing Ja Rule and refusing to rap on that beat and mocking him for falling off. Numerous Eminem tracks surfaced dissing Ja Rule specifically, including I'm Gone with Obi Trice, See Monkey Do, and Bully, and eventually 50 Cent is interviewed in the February 2004 edition of Vibe, savaging Ja Rule after being asked whether or not he used the Ja beef to his advantage, and saying straight up that it was Ja Rule who made his career by giving him so much attention in 2002 when Ja was popping and 50 was a nobody. 50 went on to say that Ja Rule sucks at business and missed all of the opportunities to get money in rap that 50 took. And 50 ends the interview by saying that Ja Rule owns nothing and that he couldn't think straight in the same street situations as 50 because Ja ain't reading from the streets. 2 months after this, Ja Rule ended up getting his cover on Vibe magazine with the slightly embarrassing headline, Ja Rule, is this the end? Now, this article was quite something because it was filled with Ja Rule attempting to puff himself up as if he wasn't really going broke or becoming irrelevant. He posed next to his Maybach, reminding everybody that Maybach cost $400,000, and he has numerous properties. Oh, and do you remember when 50 Cent said Ja Rule didn't have a business brain? Nah, because Ja Rule says he just started a clothing company. Oh, and a movie company. Yeah, apparently it's going so well that Ja Rule just gets a flood of scripts coming through to his inbox every week. You know, because like scripts are like money, right? Oh, and he's been married to his high school sweetheart for the past 4 years. 50 can't say that, can he? And he sold 8 million albums. You know, different albums, not all one album like 50 Cent did. But yes, according to this article, it's Ja Rule who was the fearless warrior, who decided to take on the toughest gladiator the rap game had to offer, and becoming the most hated person in the rap game in the process. He died for your sins. He's basically Jesus of beef. As the interview goes on, Ja Rule is portrayed as the renegade tough guy, the lyrical Tony Montana coked up and running into a hail of bullets. But by the end of the article, even the writer is dropping sly digs, saying that Ja Rule should have prayed for better album.
It's Fortnite. I'm kind of shocked that you haven't heard of it. Yeah. It's like a multiplayer game. And please don't tell me I need to go to sleep. I know when I need to go to sleep. Can't even be mad about that.